God spoke to Moses and Aaron and told them to give these instructions to the people of Israel. If a man has an unusual bodily discharge, he is considered ceremonially unclean because of it. Whether the discharge is actively flowing or even blocked up, the condition still makes him unclean. Anything he lies on becomes unclean. Anything he sits on becomes unclean too. If someone touches his bed, they must wash their clothes, bathe in water, and they will remain unclean until evening. The same goes for anyone who touches something he sat on. If someone touches the man himself, they must wash their clothes, bathe, and remain unclean until evening. If the man spits on someone who is clean, that person must also wash up and stay unclean until evening. Anything he rides on, like a saddle, becomes unclean. Anyone who touches something that was under him becomes unclean until evening. If someone carries those items, they must wash their clothes, bathe, and stay unclean until evening. If the man touches someone without first rinsing his hands in water, the person touched must wash their clothes, bathe, and remain unclean until evening. Any clay pot he touches must be broken, while wooden objects should be rinsed with water. Once the man is healed from the discharge, he must wait 7 days for cleansing. During that time he should wash his clothes and bathe himself in fresh running water, and then he will be considered clean. On the 8th day, he must bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons to the priest at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will offer one bird as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, making atonement before the Lord for him. If a man has an emission of semen, he must wash his whole body with water and remain unclean until evening. Any clothing or leather that the semen touches must also be washed and will remain unclean until evening. If a man and woman have sexual relations, both of them must bathe in water and remain unclean until evening. If a woman has her monthly period, she will be ceremonially unclean for 7 days. Anyone who touches her will remain unclean until evening. Anything she lies on or sits on during that time becomes unclean. Anyone who touches her bed or anything she sat on must wash their clothes, bathe in water, and remain unclean until evening. Even if someone touches an object that was on her bed or chair, they become unclean until evening. If a man sleeps with her during her period and comes into contact with her bleeding, he will be unclean for 7 days, and any bed he lies on will also become unclean. If a woman has bleeding for many days outside of her normal menstrual cycle, or if her bleeding continues longer than usual, she remains ceremonially unclean the entire time, just as she would during her regular period. Anything she lies on or sits on during this extended bleeding becomes unclean in the same way. Anyone who touches those things must wash their clothes, bathe in water, and remain unclean until evening. When the bleeding finally stops, she must wait 7 days, and after that she will be considered clean. On the 8th day, she must bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons to the priest at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will offer one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, making atonement before the Lord for her cleansing. The purpose of all these instructions was to keep the people of Israel separate from ceremonial uncleanness so they would not defile God's tabernacle, where His presence was among them. So this chapter gives the guidelines for a man with a bodily discharge, a man who has an emission of semen,